The fog comes off the canal before the sun does. You know this because you're already awake when it happens, sitting on the edge of a cot that's been yours for 6 years and belonged to your dead brother before that. The springs are shot. The wool blanket smells like coal dust and damp brick. Outside, Small Heath is still dark, still quiet, still pretending it's something other than what it is. You pull on your boots without thinking. Lace them tight, double knot, because a man who trips over his own feet in the wrong alley doesn't trip twice. The flat cap goes on last. You press it to the right angle. The razor blade is already sewn into the brim. You put it there yourself 2 years ago, a Saturday afternoon at the kitchen table with a needle and thread, and your hands steadier than they had any right to be. You don't look in the mirror. You already know what you'll see. Downstairs, your mother is awake. She's always awake before you. She doesn't ask where you're going. She stopped asking 18 months ago, around the time the money started coming in regular. She pours you a cup of tea. Strong, no sugar, the way the family has always taken it. You drink it standing up. She watches your face the way mothers watch faces when they know something is wrong but can't name it yet. If this fog and these streets already pull something tight in your chest, stay with it. This is that kind of story. You set the cup down. You leave. The street is wet. The cobblestones are black with last night's rain, and the fog sits low over everything, swallowing the gas lamps whole, so they glow like bruises in the gray. Your breath comes out in clouds. The cold gets into the wool of your jacket and stays there. The canal smell drifts up from the bottom of the road, iron and mud and something faintly rotten that you stopped noticing years ago. You walk fast, not because you're late, because standing still in Small Heath before sunrise draws the wrong kind of attention. The betting shop is at the end of Garrison Lane. You'd know it even blindfolded. You smell it from 30 yards. Wood smoke, horse sweat soaked into the floorboards, the ghost of last week's cigarettes hanging in the low ceiling. The door is unlocked. It's always unlocked when the right people want it unlocked, and locked solid when they don't. And the difference between those two states is the difference between coming home and not coming home at all. Inside, 3 men are already there. Finn is sharpening something at the back table. He doesn't look up. Curly sleeps on a bench with his coat over his face. The third man you don't recognize sits perfectly straight near the fire, with his hands on his knees, and his eyes on the door. Eyes on you now. You keep your face flat. You take your spot against the wall near the back window. From here you can see both exits and the street through the cracked glass. You learned to do that before you understood why. Now you understand exactly why. Arthur comes in at 6:15. The room gets smaller when Arthur walks in. It's not his size, though he's big enough. It's the atmosphere he carries, the way silence follows him into a space like a dog that won't stay outside. He sets a bottle of whiskey on the table, doesn't pour any, looks at each of you in turn. The stranger gets a name. Sefton, runs collection for a bookmaker out of Digbeth, who's been working your territory for 5 weeks without paying for the privilege. He's here to negotiate. He has a bruise under his left eye that wasn't put there by furniture. Arthur explains the terms in a voice that's almost gentle. That's what surprises new men every time. They expect shouting, expect the version of violence they've seen from drunk men in pub doorways. What they get instead is arithmetic. Simple numbers, simple consequences, simple choices presented without decoration. Sefton listens. He nods. He doesn't argue. You don't say anything. Your job today isn't talking. By 8 the arrangement is settled. Sefton shakes Arthur's hand and leaves without his hat. Nobody points this out. Your day starts properly at 9:30. The job is a pub on the Coventry Road. A man named Doyle has been running card games out of the back room, which is not in itself a problem. What's become a problem is that Doyle has been bringing in players from outside the city, men who don't know the arrangement. Last Wednesday, one of those men put broken glass across the face of a boy who works the Stratford Road. The boy is 16. He'll carry that scar until he's an old man. That's not the problem. Scars are the occupation. The problem is what it says if you let it sit unanswered. A message that your people can be touched, and nothing follows. Once that message settles, it spreads the way damp spreads through plaster, quietly and then all at once. You walk to the Coventry Road with 2 men. Danny is on your left. He's been with you since before you were anyone. Since the 2 of you were boys stealing coal off barges on winter nights to keep your families from freezing. He doesn't talk much. He communicates through presence and the weight of his footsteps, and right now his footsteps are saying everything worth saying. The other man is Shaw. Newer, proven in small ways, which means you watch him more carefully in the larger ones. The fog has thinned. The city is fully awake. Trams grind along their tracks. Women carry market bags. Men in overalls move toward the factory gates with their faces set against the morning. Nobody looks at you. That's how it works. You dress like everyone else. You walk like everyone else. The city has learned not to see you, and you've learned to walk inside that invisibility like a second coat. Inside the Crown and Anchor, the smell of old beer and damp sawdust hits you immediately. The barman sees you and finds something urgent at the far end of the counter. Doyle is in the back room alone, counting money with the practiced ease of a man who has done it his whole life. He hears you come in and takes half a second before looking up. That half second is him deciding what kind of conversation this is going to be. You pull a chair and sit across from him. Danny stands at the door. Shaw stands behind Doyle. Not close, just present, the way a wall is present. You don't raise your voice. The man who cut your boy isn't going to be sitting at anyone's card table in this city again. That's already decided. What's being decided now is whether Doyle understands the difference between one man's poor judgment and a deliberate statement of intent, and whether he wants to be treated accordingly. Doyle understands. He's been in Birmingham long enough. He counts a figure from the stack and pushes it across without being told the number. You let it sit there for a moment, because the moment matters. Then you fold it once, and put it in your inside pocket. You stand. You straighten your jacket. You look at him for 2 full seconds without speaking. He doesn't look away, which tells you something, and he doesn't hold your gaze too long, which tells you something else. He's not afraid exactly. He's recalibrated. You leave. The street outside smells like coal smoke and cold air, and the metal smell of wet tram tracks. The afternoon is quieter. Counting, organizing, a conversation. With a constable who visits the betting shop on the second Thursday of every month, and leaves with an envelope in the understanding that certain reports will be filed a certain way. You know where he lives, and what his family looks like. You know this because knowing things about people is how you remain useful, and how you remain safe, and you can no longer separate those two objectives from each other. The evening is where the city changes. By 7 the gas lamps are lit, and the fog is back, pooling in the low spaces, hanging in the circles of gaslight like smoke that can't find anywhere to go. The pubs are filling. The streets have a different noise, looser, the weight of the week beginning to come apart. You've learned to read an evening the way a sailor reads weather. There's a texture to a night that's going to go badly, a specific frequency to the laughter coming out of pub doorways that isn't actually about anything funny. Tonight has that feeling. You're walking back along the cut behind the Garrison when you hear it. Not loud, just wrong. A scuffling against brick, the particular dull sound of impact against a body rather than a wall. You stop. The fog holds it and releases it. Danny stops half a pace behind you. You go in. 3 men, in a narrow passage between 2 back walls of terraced rows. Men you don't recognize. Dressed like working men, but moving differently. A boy of maybe 15 is backed against the brickwork trying with everything he is not to make a sound. His cap is on the ground. The air smells like damp stone and the sharp copper edge of fear. One of the 3 has a folding knife out, nothing elaborate. The kind a man carries for reasonable purposes until he makes a different decision. The man with the knife sees you. He takes a second to make a calculation. You watch him run through it, the way you can always see men run through it, and he arrives at the wrong answer. He steps toward you. What happens in the next 30 seconds is not complicated. It is simply thorough. Afterward, 2 of the 3 are on the ground and the 3rd is at the far end of the passage and still moving. The fog takes him. The boy is shaking with the specific quality of a body that has been holding itself completely still under extreme pressure, and is now suddenly released. You tell him to go home. He picks his cap up from the ground first, which tells you something about him. Then he goes. Danny is already walking. You follow. Nobody saw anything. Nobody ever sees anything in the passages behind the Garrison. It is practically a civic tradition. Back at the betting shop, you sit with a glass of whiskey you don't particularly want, and you think about the boy's face. Not with guilt, more with something that doesn't have a clean name in any language you know. You got into this world the same way he almost got pulled into trouble, through geography, through being in a particular place at a particular age, with no other options visible from where you were standing. You were 14 when the older men first took notice of you. You were quick, you could keep your mouth shut. You weren't afraid of things that frightened sensible people. The money started, your mother's face changed. The tension of not knowing how rent would be paid began to lift, and you told yourself what settled in its place was peace. You think about your brother. He died in France in 1917, which is why you have his cot, and why the springs are shot, and why your mother is always awake before you no matter the hour. He wrote letters home that were deliberately cheerful, the kind of cheerful that communicates how bad things are by carefully not saying it. The men who came back from the war came back carrying something with no peacetime name and no peacetime use. The gangs gave that thing somewhere to go. You didn't go. You were too young. But you grew up around those men, and something of what they carried transferred into you, the way cold transfers from stone when you press your hand against it long enough. You finished the whiskey. The city is settling into its late version of itself. The pub noise has changed, more tired, more honest. Somewhere down the road a woman is singing something you can almost recognize. A music hall song that keeps dissolving into the fog before it reaches the parts you know. From here, in the warmth of the betting shop with the fire burned low and the lamp on the table casting everything amber, the city through the window looks almost gentle. You know exactly what it is. Tomorrow there will be more counting, and more quiet conversations and more arithmetic delivered without raised voices. There will be men who need persuading and men who need something simpler than that. There will be decisions that sound uncomplicated when described and feel entirely different in the moment. With another man's eyes on yours, you understand something now that you didn't when you started. The gang doesn't run on violence. Violence is the punctuation, not the text. What it runs on is the same thing the factories run on, and the churches and the pubs and the whole arrangement of this city. It runs on the human need to belong somewhere, to be known, to matter inside some structure that will remember your name when you leave a room. You found that here, in the fog and the counting rooms and the flat cap pressed to the right angle and the two men who walked with you this morning without needing to be told what for. The fire dies to red embers. You pull your jacket tighter and listen to the city breathe itself toward midnight. Tomorrow you'll do it again. Not because you can't stop, because somewhere between the cot that smells like your dead brother and the razor blade sewn into your brim and the boy who collected his cap before he ran, you stop being able to picture what you would be if you did. That's the price of the cap. You pressed it on yourself.